wonderful crowd this morning. Everyone got cappuccinos, I hope, and some breakfast. Welcome. Welcome to the stunningly beautiful mountains of Aspen for the 14th annual Aspen Security Forum. We are so happy to have you all here. Thank you. We are immersing ourselves in this beautiful place for the next 3 days to get out of our ordinary routine and to think and to look a little bit beyond the challenges right in front of us and think bigger, to exercise our imaginations. But we're meeting here at a perilous moment when great powers are acting badly, war seems closer than it has in decades, and any misstep in our foreign policy could be catastrophic. I recently reread a beautiful book by the French resistance fighter named Marc Bloch. He blames the failure of France's Maginot Line, those famous defenses, on that the Germans, of course, just circumvented and went around, on a lack of imagination by French leaders. And he says they were incapable of thinking in terms of a new war. In the next few days, our goal is to ensure that our children don't accuse us of a similar lack of imagination. Our mission for this Aspen Security Forum is to look further out, not at the next summit or at the next headline, but what's looming over the horizon. What are the technical, political, economic challenges that we may not be paying enough attention to? We have already heard from senior distinguished leaders last night, and we are hearing from so many more. We feel very proud of this program and all the people who've chosen to join us. Distinguished senior US officials, Secretaries Blinken and Mayorkas, UN Envoy Linda Thomas-Greenfield, who we heard from last night, the Director of the Office of Science and Technology, Prabhakar, CIA Director Bill Burns, National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan, and previous senior officials who served in distinguished Republican administrations, Secretaries Pompeo and Esper, Condoleezza Rice, Steve Hadley is with us. So we are continuing the great tradition of Aspen of being bipartisan and thoughtful and calm in our deliberations. We are particularly proud to have with us a big and distinguished international contingent of leaders this time. Senior leaders from the UK, from Canada, from France, China, NATO, Afghanistan, and many other countries, as well as defense, civil society, and business leaders. Jointly, we're going to explore how we can prevail in new theaters of competition, from the Arctic to the South Pacific, from undersea cables and to outer space. How we can use the enormous existing US defense budget more effectively and to get us the technologies that we need. How attempts to secure critical minerals and other resources will affect the geopolitical landscape. We will hear from Afghanistan's opposition leader, Ahmed Massoud, and explore whether we're ignoring a resurgence of extremism. And we're shaking up dated assumptions about the Middle East and Africa. We heard from Kenyan National Security Advisor Monica Juma, and we'll hear from Israeli former Foreign Minister Tzipi Livni. An important through line for all of our conversations this week will be the impact of technology. We're living at a really critical point in history where technology is advancing so much faster than the ability of our government to make sense of it, to use it effectively, and to regulate it appropriately. But this is essential. We're not just exploring the downside scenario, the Maginot Line disaster that we may not be imagining. That's not why we're here. We're here to refocus, to reimagine, and to ultimately create a more positive world. For example, how to help Ukraine build a more prosperous democratic future, whether the US and China can de-escalate tensions enough to actually cooperate on the important transnational issues that affect all of us, and how the world can responsibly develop artificial intelligence and other technologies to harness them for the greater good. This is a mission for all of us in this room, not just those who will be appearing on stage. So I want to leave you with an optimistic note. The great American poet Walt Whitman, an optimist if there ever was one, captured the spirit we're trying to emulate here in his homage to the American West, the Song of the Open Road. He said, "From this hour, I ordain myself loosened of imaginary lines, listening to others, considering well what they say, pausing, searching, contemplating, gently but with undeniable will, divesting myself of the holds that would hold me." Isn't that a nice sentiment? So for all of us here, in the sessions, outside when you're chatting with people, in the Google tent, at meals, I encourage us all to use the backdrop of these beautiful mountains to divest ourselves of our lack of imagination, to envision and create an optimistic, brave, and better world. Thank you all so much for being here. Let me now do some very important thank yous, and I'd love to turn it over to the innovator who actually created the Aspen Strategy Group almost 39 years ago, amazingly, Joe Nye, to tell us a little bit about the history. So the very important thank you goes, first of all, to all of our Aspen colleagues, from the leadership to across all of our programs to the people who are making it possible to be here today. None of this would happen without our sponsors. Google, thank you. Thank you also for the cappuccino, which I really needed this morning. I appreciate it. MasterCard, McKinsey, Microsoft, MITRE, PayPal, the Rockefeller Foundation, the United Launch Alliance, USA Rare Earths, USIT, the Walton Family Foundation, with additional support from Beacon Global Strategies, Intel, Govini, and American Airlines. Our media partners, NBC and Financial Times, you are invaluable to the work we do here. And most importantly, none of this would happen without our really unbelievable, small but amazing team, and I hope you'll all stand. Our director, Neve King, our deputy director, Leah Batunis, Deb Cunningham, Emily Lawrence, Chris Herman, Anna Kliggensmith, who are working these issues all year long. Thank you. And this summer, we also have help from our Scowcroft Fellows, Karina Martinez, Brent Katz, Vera Youssef is helping us. And for this week, Dulcie, Morgan, many of our Aspen colleagues here on the ground, especially John Purvis and the Aspen Comms team, and my colleague, Janet Ohm. Thank you very much, and let me turn it over to Joe. Thank you.
Thank you, Anja, and for those who were not in the tent last night, I'll repeat my greetings to you all. It's great to have you here. Anja asked me to say a word or two about the origins of the Aspen Strategy Group as a way of helping to set the scene that she set on the current issues we're dealing with. In 1984, Brent Scowcroft and Bill Perry and I got together and decided that if we could try to bring people out of Washington, we might diminish the degree of partisan politics, and we might be able to have a case where instead of just telling our preferred policy to each other, we might actually listen to each other. Speaking is common, listening is rare. And it turned out that that was a success. We were able to develop a tradition of having people present their policy views, and these were often fraught policies, but present them in a way where people could respond and listen, and equally important to listening is changing your mind. We hope to maintain that tradition of keeping people in a mode where we downplay our partisan differences and try to hear what the others are saying to be able to change our minds when appropriate. It's interesting to go back to the early origins and to realize that there were deep partisan differences on national security, and there was a great fear of another Cold War getting out of control. It was sometimes called the Little Cold War, or resumed Cold War that followed détente. Indeed, we had a nuclear freeze movement in this country, and people were on the streets to prevent the deployment of short-range missiles in Europe. That was the atmosphere in which we created the Aspen Strategy Group. As Anja just said, today's atmosphere is equally fraught, but with a different set of issues. But what we'd like to do is, despite the change in the issues, to keep that tradition of downplaying our partisan differences and listening to each other, and occasionally changing our minds. So again, let me repeat our welcome. Thanks.
Thank you. Let me now welcome to the stage General James Dickinson, the commander of U.S. Space Command. This is a really important new theater of war where he and his team are keeping